Our next presentation, as you can see, is from Destaney. Now, if you don't know who Destaney is or Better AMS, this is one of the top. If you want to know anything about Amazon advertising, whether it's sponsored ads or PPC, it doesn't matter. She is the person that a lot of people go to. She's one of the goddesses of Amazon advertising. I mean, she knows her stuff. Even though she lives in the backyard of Walmart, she knows her stuff on Amazon. And today she's going to be talking about, hey, what's working right now? What should you be thinking about for 2022 from the creative side? From should you be doing top of search or not? Or how do you dominate it? Or how can you leverage off-platform stuff to actually help you on Amazon? And the whole 9 yards. So Destaney, welcome. I'm excited to have you here. It's going to be an awesome presentation.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. As always, it's amazing speaking to your audience, Kevin, and thank you so much for that intro. Ooh, do we have audio?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Oh, good to go. Okay. All right, I will hop on in then. So today, talking about Amazon advertising in 2022. Anyone who's kind of followed my content, followed my style, knows that I typically like to start with like setting the context of what we're seeing in the industry, and then really just giving examples of why something works rather than just saying, hey, follow step A to Z and it'll work 100% for your brand. I like to really give the context behind things. So after we go through all of the recommendations for this year, anyone who has specific questions on whether or not something's a good fit for them or their specific scenario, feel free to reach out and hop in that session, because that's really where I kind of thrive in making sure I'm giving advice that's specific for you rather than just, giving you blanket advice for what we're seeing. But with that being said, something I've been starting with is the state of the industry. So anyone who shops on Amazon or has a product on Amazon typically knows what this looks like. So you type in your number one main keyword, and this is what you see. Top of search is a very large headline search ad advertising, 3 products, copy. Directly below, you have 4 sponsored product placements. And why this is so valuable to understand is because it doesn't matter if you're ranked in the top 4. Like it or not, Amazon is prioritizing their search results. And this is, heavily saturated with just sponsored ads. And what's even crazier is if you are in the top 4, you then scroll a little bit lower, and now you have, editorial recommendations, a video and search ad, more sponsored product placements directly below. So if you're not ranked in the top 4, getting visibility to your listing is really, really complex. And even when you do scroll below, as you can see here, more ads and a DSP ad. And then once you actually have people on your listing, that's not safe either. Your product detail page is filled with over 35 different sponsored product ads. We're now having sponsored display ads directly below the buy box. And then below that, we have even more sponsored brand ads. So all of this to say is it's not fantastic. Amazon is definitely being highly, highly saturated with sponsored ads, but that's the state of the industry. And we're having to maneuver for how Amazon is creating the rules for the game. So observations from this is, one, we're seeing an increase in cost per clicks. A ton of brands shifted their budgets from retail to Amazon during the COVID catalyst, and everyone's seeing how important it is to be advertising in top of search. So increasing CPCs across the board, top of search focus for a lot of brands, page 1 ads saturation, ranking complexity due to terms of service changes, and attribution and cost per acquisition being more and more important. Now, the reason I call some of these out is everyone's familiar with the recent terms of service change. And what that really affected was your ability to rank well. And with all of the changes in manipulation, we've seen a lot of people shifting their budgets to being heavily focused on ads, because that's one of the easiest ways to drive incredibly high purchase intent traffic to your listing. But we're probably going to have to pay for that. So before diving into the Amazon advertising strategies for that, I wanted to talk about brand metrics, which is one of the newest ways that Amazon's allowed us the opportunity to truly understand how our brand is performing on the platform. So before I audit any brands, before I manage their PPC, I'm really wanting them to understand their brand on the platform. So that way they can then decide whether or not it's worthwhile for them to drive a ton more traffic, whether PPC or externally. You need to know how your brand's performing. So if you play around in Advertising Console, you'll see this tiny little arrow in the top left-hand corner. Once you click into it, you typically see something like this. Select a category specific to your brand. You'll have your brand name, and then you'll be able to select a category. And what it's going to show you is a screen like this. Now, this is a very zoomed out screenshot, so that way you can see it native on your desktop. But if we go a little bit more zoomed in, this is the information Brand Metrics is giving us. So what they're doing is they're taking your organic data and your advertising data and combining it and saying, this is how you are performing relative to your competitors within your specific category. And it's not just vitamins. You can actually go to subcategories as specific as prenatal vitamins, which will allow you to say, hey, my brand has a 41% customer conversion rate. My category average is 33%. High level, looking at this, I would say, yes, you should be spending money on PPC. You should be spending money on external traffic because you are converting so well. But if you have a terrible converting listing or you're not, competing relative to your category average, that's a good indicator that you should relook at your listing. So I have a ton of brands that reach out to me like, hey, I think PPC's, the fix to my problem. I think I need to be spending more money on ads. That'll make me rank more. In reality, you take a look at this data and we'll see that the brand's not competing compared to their category. So even if they are driving a ton of traffic, if the customers aren't converting, they're leaving and going somewhere else. So highly, highly recommend diving into this, especially as we see those increasing ad costs. 5 years ago, you could have a terrible listing because ad costs were so cheap and your CPCs were so low that even if you didn't convert well, you could still have a really strong ACOS. So now that we're seeing things get more competitive, like we see in native advertising environments, we're having to do a better job of understanding our brand metrics. So now that we're very familiar with where we're at, let's talk about kind of the two biggest things and the two biggest changes we're seeing in the advertising space. One, the importance of top of search and driving traffic to your listings. That is much more important than a low ACOS. Two, we're going to be talking towards the end of the presentation, all the new rollouts and industry changes we're seeing as we head into 2022. But for top of search and driving traffic, what is the highest visibility ad placement on Amazon? Now we could, throw out multiple ad types. We could say one ad type's better than the other, but in reality, top of search as a whole is one of the highest visibility placements. So as you can see here, this is a very specific Prime Day campaign that we were running, and we wanted to win as much impression share as possible. So we set up these campaigns for top of search focus with our headline search ad, focusing on a few key keywords. And we did the same thing for our sponsored product ads that we really wanted to dominate. And as mentioned earlier, if you have any form of, deal being ran, your conversion rate's automatically going to be higher. So we always set up specific campaigns for our deals so we can drive additional traffic, knowing that our conversion rate's going to be higher. Now, here's the kind of key thing about this. When you're looking at top of search or dominating traffic for your top keywords, it's not a profitability play. It's about gaining maximum traffic, which is not fantastic, but that's where we're seeing the industry shift. Anyone who's still making, judgment calls specifically on ACOS and ROAS is potentially not doing what's in the best interest for, their advertising or their Amazon brand in general. The reason being is when you spend more on ads, you typically convert more. And when you convert more, your organic ranking increases. So that's how we've started looking at things. Here are the results from this campaign. $7.76 cost per click, which is absolutely insane. But we had a 36% conversion rate, and that's an advertising conversion rate. So what we found is we were converting so well that when we continue to drive a ton of traffic to this specific keyword, we noticed that over time, our organic rank increased. So we actually went from being ranked number 8 to number 3 for our number 1 keyword. And as you guys have seen in search, when you make that move to the top of the page, it is a huge jump. You're no longer, at the bottom of the scroll. You're at the very top of the page. As you can see here, ACOS and ROAS is terrible, but this was a ranking campaign. So when we're looking at really increasing our rank, we want to make sure we're converting incredibly well, because ranking psychology at the end of the day is, how do I drive as much traffic as possible to my top keywords and then convert well for them? If I convert well, that signals to Amazon, hey, this is important. We need to keep driving traffic. So I wanted to kind of drop this in here as a good measure in how you can improve your organic ranking, but also as general guidance into how you should be viewing your PPC. Again, it's no longer about incremental sales at incredibly low ACOS. There's still opportunity for that. But if we really want to focus on driving a ton of traffic, these are the areas to do it in the top of search. Now for this campaign structure, 1 parent ASIN per campaign, 1 to 4 keywords, depending on budget, high bids to win ad inventory, because we know the difference between top of search is a lot of impression share. And then we typically do low budgets to control marketing goals. If you set a really high bid and a $200 a day budget, you're going to hemorrhage money on these placements because there's so much traffic available. But if you set a low budget, similar to what you'd set aside for a ranking campaign externally, it's a good way to control how much you're investing in this space. Here's a quick example of what it looks like for us. We do it for pretty much all the ad types that we are wanting to dominate market share for. And then another good aspect of this is, I think one of the hottest questions we typically get in the groups is, can I see what keyword or search term I'm organically converting for and how well I'm converting for it? You can't. Amazon's not giving us that. But you can, pull any type of scraper, or you can use your advertising data to make some good assumptions by this. So when we're focusing on top of search, the beauty of that #1 sponsored product placement is it looks a lot like the #1 organic placement, except for it's higher up on the page. So we can make assumptions on our data here in how well a customer is converting. So as you can see here, the plural actually converts at 18% conversion rate, but singular, we have a 25% conversion rate. So this tells me I could maybe make adjustments to my listing or my ranking campaigns, because now I know how much better something converts, and that's a lower cost per click. So it's kind of another value add for setting up this campaign structure. And then last, this is another really cool report that we've been utilizing to help us make better decisions. So impression share report is basically allowing us to see how much sponsored product impression share we're winning for certain keywords. Where this becomes really valuable is it's basically your search term report, but with impression share. So I can see my conversion rate, my CPCs, and then make judgments based off that. So as an example, I can see for kids probiotics, I have a 40% conversion rate. Absolutely insane, incredibly high. I have a pretty low CPC, and I'm only winning 44% of sponsored product impression share. So judging by this, I would want to go in and increase my bid and know that, hey, if I have the opportunity to advertise very aggressively on this keyword, I'm converting insanely well, and my organic ranking will increase over time because of that. So this is some of the things that we're using to really help us grow our market share, understand where we are in the industry. On the flip side, you can see for probiotics, we have 81% impression share for the specific ASIN, but only a 15% conversion rate. So I'm going to look at this and say, hey, I need to really take a look at my listing, or I should probably decrease my spend on probiotics for that specific ASIN because I'm not converting well. So highly, highly recommend taking a look at your impression share report, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at your advertising strategy, it's not one size fits all solution. You need to have campaigns for different goals, for ranking, for winning market share, for, targeting your competitors. And then you have another set of campaigns focused on profitability, long tail keyword research, focusing on bid optimization. You can have 2 keywords in 2 different campaigns of 2 different bids, having 2 very different goals. So what you really want to do is have that whole picture when it comes to your Amazon advertising strategy. Now, where that lays into the updates for the future, I'm going to do a quick run through some sponsor brand updates, talk about sponsored display, and cover some of the social aspects and what we're seeing in Amazon advertising for the new year. Starting with sponsored brands. So one of the most beautiful things that has been rolled out in Amazon sponsored brands is a custom image. So if you've been searching on desktop, or Chrome is where it's typically been rolled out for the last few weeks, you'll see something like this. This is a custom image added to a sponsored brand ad. It does incredibly well. It's actually been beta rolled out for almost 2 years now, but Amazon's had some issues with it, so they keep taking it back in-house. But this is what it looks like on desktop. It takes up a huge portion of the page, whether it's on mobile or on desktop. You have a lot of your page 1 being given to this sponsored brand headline search ad with a custom image. Here's where it's at. If you're in your campaign manager, there's typically some confusion around how you run this ad type because it's this really tiny button called custom image beta. It's an open beta. Everyone with brand registry should have it. You click include a custom image and supported placements. So once you add that, you can then upload your image. Now, the beautiful thing about this is when we've been split testing it against regular campaigns, we've seen it can drive a 504% increase in click-through rate. It also has inventory expansion. It's now showing up on the product detail page. We've seen it being beta tested at the bottom of the page. Again, 45% top of search presence takes up a very large portion of the page. And it's great for cross-selling, branding, and lifestyle. So as mentioned earlier, if you are aligning your copy with the appropriate landing pages, appropriate products being showcased, you can add a lifestyle image that, showcases your product in action. Or maybe if you're selling protein and, pre-workout, you want to show them in the same use case so that way you can increase your basket quantity. The custom image does this incredibly well. Now, one thing to note is if you upload a custom image, sometimes Amazon's not going to show it, but it just reverts to your regular campaign. So it's kind of a low risk way to test the imagery out. And we've seen it do really, really well so far. Another thing I wanted to discuss, video and search ad. So I'm not going to go too in depth with this because everyone's been running these. It's, one of the most exciting ad types. But I will say Amazon's planning on rolling out a few things this year. One, they're working on a video ad builder. So that way everyone can, basically bust out assets a lot quicker instead of having to pay professional media. That's going to be super cool. Another aspect is they're testing running to a store page or a multi-product landing page. So right now, I think one of the most inefficient ad types we have is video and search. So you have to create a specific video for one product. And if you have any, unusual setups, separate parents, things like that, it gets really, really complicated and really expensive to create videos at scale. But these rollouts should be really beneficial. I also wouldn't be surprised to see if they allowed us to run video and search ads for off-platform. It's been kind of rumored internally that it's something that we're going to have control over, similar to running like an OTT ad, but within advertising consoles. So I wanted to throw a video in here to say, if you're still not sure of it or you're not having video assets created quick enough, definitely invest in this because it's an area Amazon cares a ton about. There's a lot of opportunity. We're also seeing video and search ads being ran on the product detail page lately, which means that the more ad inventory we have, the more diverse we'll see for CPCs. So not everyone's going to be paying for this one placement anymore. We'll have a different inventory available. So that way those costs may go down a little bit because it has been a little bit more expensive to run when everyone's bidding for the same spot on the page. Here's what it looks like on the PDP. You can also see that these video assets are driving to the store page. So if you click the little button above, drives to a store page. So again, making video ads more scalable. To kind of back up some of this, I think last year we drove 13.6 million in sales from sponsor brand video ads. They have the highest average click-through rate of all of our ads. One thing that's really beautiful about video ads is a cost per click model. So you're only getting charged when someone clicks on it, which means everyone who's concerned with having a lower quality video ad, you're not getting charged when people view it, only when they click. And if someone watches your video and still takes the time to click, they have really high purchase intent typically. So highly recommend running video ads. Also would note that we split test commercial grade video assets versus the kind of typical PowerPoint template that Amazon pushes out. And the commercial grade actually performed 1% less in terms of click-through rate. And I would assume that's because when people are shopping on Amazon, they don't want to see a commercial grade video. They want to see something that helps them make a better purchasing decision. So if you had just a regular PowerPoint video or a really simple ad, don't stress about that. When we split test the results from some of our largest, CPG brands, we've seen that it's okay to just have something a little bit more simple. Now, running through sponsored display quickly, this is one of the funnest areas of Amazon right now, but also one of the areas of the biggest amount of confusion because sponsored display is pretty complex to run. There's a lot of confusion between what's DSP, what's display, and there's not a lot of education in the market for it. But I will say that this could easily be a random clickbaity screenshot, but I wanted to show it because if ran appropriately, sponsored display will run in line with your sponsored product and sponsored brand ads. Of course, some placements are going to be a little bit more expensive, but in general, when we're just talking about ad inventory, Sponsored display is going to make up around 5 to 10% of your total advertising sales if being ran to the maximum. And if you have really good bid management, it's still going to perform really, really well. Now, diving into this, sponsored display ads typically show up directly below your kind of bullets in your product detail page and the buy box. They also have random ad inventory off platform or just in other areas on Amazon, but they look like this. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So you have your native sponsored display ad, but you can also add copy to your sponsored display ad like you see here, or you can add a custom image just like you can on sponsored brands. So all three of these are actually sponsored display. They're not DSP ads. All of these can be ran if you have brand registry within your account. And here's an example of what one looks like directly below your buy box. You can see exact same price point. This one has less reviews, no competitive advantage. So it's probably not a fantastic ad, but it's highly, highly valuable because of that placement. So things that we've seen do incredibly well is, tentpole events. You have your holiday shopping period, you have Prime Day, all of those where people are doing more window shopping than normal. Sponsored display outshines. They do incredibly well. And then if you get really selective on your targeting and making sure you're only targeting products that you have a competitive advantage of, sponsored display is an amazing ad type. Now, throwing this in here just for anyone who gets confused clicking around sponsored display. This isn't a direct correlation, but this is what we typically see. If you're remarketing your current customer base, it's probably going to convert well and have a low ACOS. If you're remarketing your competitor's customer base, it's going to have a higher ACOS, but can still do well because it's a remarketing ad type. If you're running product targeting, it's like manual targeting. You are selecting the products you want to target. It's going to be bid management at that point. Category targeting is getting a little bit broader. Audience targeting is getting incredibly broad. So don't expect a low ACOS with audience targeting unless you're bidding incredibly low. So feel free to save this for later on. Now, walking through why sponsored display is complex within Campaign Manager, this is why there's just a lot of variables that can change your performance. So again, I usually start with product targeting, and then I like to optimize pretty much everything for conversions for right now. I don't think Amazon's algorithm is as fantastic as it is on DSP. So optimize for conversions. Then instead of clicking categories, I like selecting individual products because that's going to allow me to select the specific products I want to target. So again, if I'm Nike, I want to target products that have terrible reviews, or I want to target ASICs, or I want to target something that has a higher price point than me. I really want to get selective on what I have a competitive advantage of. So that's where I go to individual products, and I'll be very selective, or I'll, utilize some of our tools in this space to upload a competitor list. But on the flip side, if you don't know what products to target, you can run category targeting. One thing I'll recommend if you're running category targeting is make sure you use this refine feature. So that way you're not saying, hey, I'm Nike and I want to target every running shoe possible. Because if I'm running an ad targeting 4,000 to 7,000 potential products, it's going to get expensive fast. But again, if I say I'm Nike and I want to target these poor brands who are, terrible performance or with a higher price point or lower reviews, that's where I'm going to get really refined and be a little bit more selective and have a higher click-through rate, conversion rate, and typically a lower ACOS. So if you move up to category targeting, definitely use the refine feature. Now, here's an example I wanted to show of both of these ad types, product targeting and category targeting during Q4. So as you can see, as the window shopping period really starts to ramp up, we have more spend, more sales, and a really strong ACOS. And this is primarily due to us being very selective over the products we're targeting, which we usually run coupons during holiday timeframes and make sure we're targeting products who are not, because the coupon shows in your badging. We'll typically target anyone who's out of stock, just so we show up directly below as another option. Or we'll do kind of cross-market targeting. So if I'm Nike, I may target, running shorts or certain running gear. Anything that could have some form of correlation, we'll target. And then it's up to your bid management to really drive success there. Moving on to kind of some incremental details, individual products, we're going to have direct control over the products. We're going to have direct control over the bid and the budgets. And it's similar to manual campaign. Category targeting, it's a lot broader. I like to say it's an auto campaign where you're giving Amazon like a blank canvas and you're saying, hey, find what works best here. Now, moving on to the more complex ad type is audience targeting. Now, audience targeting is not fantastic right now. Again, the AI needs some work, But you can assume that Amazon is using all of the data they have on DSP, which is more than we could ever imagine. And they're dripping it out to us on sponsored display. So it's a huge bet to make for the future. Amazon's going with their sponsored ads because a lot of these ads run on an external display network. They're not only showing up on Amazon, they're also showing up on some of the other providers. So it's a good way to expand our ad inventory and potentially lower our cost per click. So audience targeting, still focus on conversions. But once you click into audience targeting, this is the screen you see, it can be incredibly overwhelming. Biggest thing you need to note here is these audiences currently don't stack. So I'm not able to target females between the age of 30 and 40 who have a cat and also an income range around $50,000 a year. That's what you can do on DSP. But if you try to select those audiences in sponsored display, you're just expanding your audience bigger and bigger. So that's kind of an important thing to note. Second, remember, if you're remarketing an audience, it's a lukewarm audience already, and you have a lot of potential to drive a high ACOS, but it's not necessarily new. Someone who's potentially already viewed your listing or they've already viewed your ad. So remarketing is running really, really well right now. It's amazing, but a lot of people are kind of glorifying the results with it because the ACOS is so low. So keep that in mind when you're playing around with your audience targeting. Here is the look back windows or some of the options available. So you can go to Amazon Audience to have lifestyle, interest, life events, or in market. You can run remarketing through all these different periods or purchases remarketing. And this is super valuable because let's say I'm selling Tylenol and I know that I have 30 capsules in my bottle, which means if someone doesn't repurchase after 30 to 60 days, I should serve them an ad because I know they've already bought my product and they're ready to buy again. So these remarketing periods are super valuable. If you have a super high price point product, you could say, hey, I want to run views remarketing campaign on, the top competitor of a similar price point, and I'm going to continue to remarket them because it usually has an extended buying window. So that can be super valuable as well for anyone who's not going to buy immediately. They need to think about the product. You may want to serve them another ad. One thing to note is if you'll see views cost per impression. So this ad type is not necessarily cost per click. It is a view through cost per impression, which means with sponsored display, Amazon's attributing the sale to someone viewing the ad. I believe the view rate is 1 second. So when you're seeing 6% ACOS and $40,000 in sales, yes, the right ad type's being attributed because all your ads work together, right? But just note, it's based off the assumption of someone viewing your ad for 1 second. So there is potential for inflated numbers. So again, keep these things in mind when you're seeing results and really starting to dig into deep into display marketing. It's just a lot more complex of a model. Now, moving on to my favorite subject right now, Amazon social. So I'm actually diving in really deep on this and Prosper, but I wanted to cover some of the basics here because I think it's a really exciting topic. Amazon Post. Amazon Post is one of the newest, shiniest ad types, and it's not even technically an ad yet. But what it allows you to do is post similar to what you'd see on Instagram through your Amazon account. So you can syndicate all that content over and just really get free impressions is what it's for. Here's an example of some of the Amazon posts we're running. This brand had 11,000 followers at the time, but we were able to drive an additional 500,000 impressions for free. So you don't get charged for running Amazon posts yet. It's potentially going to be a sponsored placement in the future, but what this allows us to do is just get free clicks. So highly recommend people run Amazon post. Amazon's definitely trying to take advantage of the social shopping that we're seeing in the future. So wanted to really push that, as well as the Amazon follow button. If you run post, like you see in the right-hand corner here, there's a follow button being showcased. And on your store page, there's a follow button being showcased. And this has been really quietly rolled out across store pages and within brands. But why it's so important is Amazon is giving more advantageous opportunities to brands with a high amount of followers. So I recommend running posts because it allows you to get more impressions and free clicks, but it also allows you to get more followers. Same thing with your store page. And then when you get more followers, you have the opportunity to use customer engagement. So this was first rolled out on Vendor Central, so we have a lot of data for it, but it's recently been rolled out to Seller Central as well. And what customer engagement allows us to do is create email campaigns and email our followers. So with emailing your followers, I don't have the data on this specific slide, but they give you a template of what you're allowed to say. And it can be as simple as, hey, we launched this new product. We know you're a loyal follower of us. Check it out. Or you could say, hey, I know you really like this protein. Try this pre-workout to go with it. And it's really new, so it's being slept on. But I think it says a lot about the direction Amazon is going. So Amazon's really pushing for more social integration. They're running influencers' lives. They're giving us more creative ad types. And Amazon knows as things get more competitive and more expensive, they're going to need to give us more opportunities and more data, or people are going to start leaving the platform. So that's kind of my high-level overview of everything we've seen that's changed and that what we're expecting in the future. But let me know if anyone else has any other questions.